If I had to pick a position for myself, since we always create these kind of dichotomies, of course, I would say I'm pro-choice. And it's interesting because I did make videos about this subject in the past. It's really easy to kind of address the religious argument against abortion, and I did a video on that called "All Zygotes Go to Heaven." It's kind of self-explanatory, but there may be a little more to it. So, but in this case, addressing kind of a secular pro-life argument is a little bit different because you have to kind of put all those things aside and kind of get down to the real argument, And so the reason that I'm pro-choice is because I think that it should be a woman's decision to decide what to do with her body, period. I think that the laws that we have that were established by Roe versus Wade, which is that a woman can decide to have an abortion up to 24 weeks, which is considered fetal viability, I think that's the fairest compromise that we have. And the reason I think that is because you can find out as late as like 20 weeks if the fetus has some sort of deformity or something that is going to be pretty catastrophic, that would lead to something that would give me a really bad quality of life, a lot of suffering and pain. There are fates worse than death. So given that that is a possibility, I think we need to leave the option open, because if we decide to cut it off at 20 weeks, say, for example, or like the first trimester like John was talking about, then what do we do? Do we allow exceptions for those, or do we just say, sorry, you're out of luck? And if we're going to allow exceptions, then who gets to decide? Is it a doctor? Is it a politician? Is it the government? A judge? I mean, they're basically taking someone else's body and life into their own hands, and I don't think that's right. I think this is a moral issue that's a matter of personal morality. I think it's very subjective. I don't think there's any, determined point at which human life comes into existence. I think some people may say conception, some may say at the quickening, which is when the fetus first moves, some may say fetal viability, some may say a heartbeat, some might even say live birth. I mean, everybody has their own opinion on this. And I think that we need to have a reasonable compromise where people can determine at what point, they think it's moral or immoral. And then with respect to fetal pain, because there's been a lot of talk about this, a lot of Republican politicians are trying to curtail abortion to 20 weeks, saying that that's when fetus can feel pain, when all the actual research and all the experts in the field have generally agreed that fetal pain is not possible till about 27 weeks gestation or even later, which is past the 24-week limit that we currently have per Roe versus Wade. I know some other states don't have that limit, but I'm in favor of the 24-week limit because there's really no reason to go beyond that I can really see, unless it's really threatening the life of the mother or something in special situations. So I think it's a matter of it's a very subjective topic, and I don't think that we should be forcing our personal morality onto anyone else. Basically. We don't even allow people to tell us what to do with our bodies when we're dead. We have to follow the wishes of the person that they set forth when they were alive, or even if they didn't set forth any specific instructions, there's general guidelines. So you don't disrespect a person's wishes or their body. So I don't see how we could go about telling people what to do with their body when they're alive. And since we live in a free society, I don't think it's the government's business, the doctor's business, or anyone else but the woman herself to decide. As far as speaking to the father's rights or the man's rights that might be involved, I think that a man has to know beforehand, before he has sex with a woman, what the law is, and the law is that the woman has the ultimate choice. So I think that it's a man's responsibility to know that ahead of time. So if you think that you might get a woman pregnant, you have to understand that that's her decision. If you allow the man to have a decision, after the fact, you're going to get a lot of he said, she said stuff, and it's really, once again, it's somebody else trying to control the woman's body and what she's doing. So that's why I disagree with that as well. Albany and her story. I can certainly empathize with the traumatic experience that she went through with being forced to have an abortion. Absolutely. And I wish that wouldn't have happened. That's not really a choice. That's having something forced onto you. So as far as that goes, I really feel for you. And at the same time, another thing that was interesting that you spoke of was that you used to be religious, which I was also curious about because, it just I was wondering maybe how much, and I don't want this to turn into like everybody jump on you because you're representing the alternate position here. It's just something that kind of struck me is that, and maybe you can speak to this, when you get a chance if you want to, but religious and you kind of had this abortion forced onto you by your father. So I'm just wondering how much of your personal experience and maybe, I don't know, like, your formerly religious position. I know you said you were pro-choice when you were religious, but I know there's a lot of heavy influence in religion as far as that is tied to the. So I'm just wondering how much of that may be latent in your mind as far as choosing your position now, and also how much of your personal experience and feelings you're putting into this. And I understand that there's a lot of nuance to this position. It's not always pro-life, pro-abortion, or pro-life, pro-choice, So basically, I guess when you get a chance, if you want to kind of just further expound upon a few things like that, because it seems to me that like you agree with a lot of things that we are in favor of, like a sex education, and I absolutely advocate for education for women, giving them all their options and choices, and and for birth control and everything to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, and then all the options once they do get pregnant to avoid a pregnancy. And then I guess lastly, I'll just speak for myself. I can't say that I would ever want to have an abortion, like as far as if I got a woman pregnant. But I would want that option available if there was some catastrophic anomaly or genetic defect or something that was going to either risk the life of the mother or, like I said earlier, kind of leave this baby when born with some kind of awful chance at life, not very much quality of life, pain, suffering, things of that nature. So I can't say that I would ever want to have an abortion, but I would like to have the option available because you just never know what could happen.
I am going to address something that Prototype brought up, and that was, and I hope I kind of got this question right, like I said, they were curious on if my situation possibly affected how I feel now being pro-life, being forced into something and then maybe in a sense hating it, and so I'm kind of either rebelling and then being pro-choice and a Christian, now a pro-life atheist. Is that correct? Hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair. Pretty much, I was just curious, as I know you said you were pro-choice when you were a Christian, but I'm just wondering, I don't know exactly your religious background, so I guess how much of the religious teachings or the religious leanings, towards pro-life may be latent in your mind, or that maybe are just still lingering in there, having any effect, and then also obviously your personal experience, because that's obviously a horrible thing that you were forced to go through. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Nobody should be forced to do something, whether it's having an abortion or not having an abortion. So you being forced by your father to have an abortion is a terrible thing, and that's not having a choice. So, obviously I'm not saying that you haven't considered your position, you haven't thought about anything like that. I'm just wondering, how much maybe your emotions or maybe your past experience are affecting your current position. And I understand that you are very much in line with a lot of the pro-choice positions as far as like education and birth control and things like that, but you're still against people having the ability to have an abortion. So yeah, if you could just expound upon that.
Okay, no, absolutely. Thank you for kind of clarifying. All right, so I'm going to take like 20 seconds and just say what my religious everything was. I was baptized Catholic. I was raised Christian Methodist. I was raised pro-life, but I was actually pro-choice. I kind of went back and forth. I would see little graphics on the internet when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And at the end of the day, I considered myself pro-choice at a very young age. I moved to Colorado when I was 13, and I've lived here ever since. Excuse me. And my father, my biological dad, he was pro-choice. So I was actually raised pro-choice for most of my adolescent life, where I was very easily influenced. So yeah, I would easily say I was pro-choice, but when I got pregnant, I couldn't imagine myself going through it. And I hear a lot of people saying that personally, like all of you, most of you said that, you know, if you got pregnant, you're not sure you could go through with it or support it, but if someone else did, that's their choice. I absolutely believe that me becoming pro-life in the beginning was an emotional, was because of emotion. There's no question. There was no logic. There was no science involved. I saw my daughter in her developmental stage. I felt her move, and that was pure emotion. I absolutely admit that. What really came bringing me into where I am right now is kind of goes into the bodily autonomy. And I know that is the largest debate in this movement in the community. And to me, what it comes down to is there's two different spectrums. You have the law. Now, we do not consider fetuses persons. We know through science that it's human. Two humans cannot make something that is not human. Two cats cannot make something that are not cats. But what it comes down to is, where does this become a person? And that's normally where you have personhood laws, which I will note, I actually don't agree with a lot of personhood laws. They bother the crap out of me. But what it comes down to is, how do we view this? And I know David brought up science, and it's all about science and biology. And I was talking with a friend of mine last night, and he said something that I've been thinking about for the past month, and I found it amazing. And he's actually pro-choice. You can't argue with science, but what we know is fact right now is fact. There's no, well, it's not. That's how it is, flat line. And we can always learn more, but what we know right now is how it is. And neither side can really argue that. You can argue to a point of what we know, but past that, it comes down to an emotional and a moral standpoint. And for myself, when it comes to bodily autonomy, even though the law says that the fetus is not an individual, it is not a person, so it does not have the right to bodily autonomy, obviously, I have an emotional view on that. I see two sets of bodily autonomy here. Yes, you have the woman that should be in control of her body. My goal is not to control a woman's vagina. I don't give a shit who she sleeps with. I don't care how many people anyone wants to have sex with if it's consenting. I just don't care. I don't care what anyone does with their life. My problem is that during an abortion, we are stepping on someone else's life. And at that point, what all of it comes down to is, where do we each draw the line of what is important and who is important, and where do they become worthy? Is it at 8 weeks? Is it 12? Is it 27 when they can feel? Is it when they're born and the umbilical cuts cord? Because in a sense, they're still connected via the umbilical cord. And it comes down to personal opinion. For myself, I can't look at my children the moment they're born and go, 10 seconds ago, you were not as important. I can't look at any child that way. Deformity, conceived through rape, conceived through incest, conceived through love. When we see someone that's born, we should, as a human race, see them as equal. But in the womb, when we can't see them, now when we have laws saying that they're not really persons, which throughout history we can see when law says someone wasn't a person, morally we knew it was wrong, but we let it go. And that's where a big issue with bodily autonomy is. Now with David, I actually really liked something he said though, because he did say that it's pretty much all emotion on the pro-life standpoint, and I absolutely agree. If anyone wants to go check out my YouTube videos, you will notice that almost all of my videos address pro-life problems. I see issues in the pro-choice movement, but I'm not in the pro-choice movement. I'm in the abortion movement trying to get my side across, but I can't see my side progressing until we get our shit together.